before. To break the cycle, you have to shock the system with radical transparency and radical empathy. This is a time to be real. This is a time to be open. This is a time to see and feel what you couldn't before. This is a time for raw, unfiltered engagement. Denny and Leinberger will take you on a journey of personal and professional transformation to help you help those who matter most. You'll learn how to rehumanize engagement with an audience of audiences. The result is the cultivation of a more meaningful and productive community where trust, truth, and the value of connection thrive once again. Now, may I have your attention? Strike that. Intention, please. Let's begin. Brian Solis, digital anthropologist, optimist, human being, and author of Life Scale. At Brian Solis, briansolis.com. Introduction. The impact of technology on culture. So I'm told by a reputable person they have killed Osama bin Laden. Hot damn. Keith Urban, the former Chief of Staff to U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, via Twitter at 7:24 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, May 1, 2011, 2 hours before President Barack Obama made the announcement on national television. On the 1st of May, 2011, at 12:58 p.m. local time in Abbottabad, Pakistan, roughly 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States, Sohaib Attar took to Twitter to complain about the noise outside his apartment, unwittingly becoming the man to break the news that the U.S. Navy SEALs were on their way to kill Osama bin Laden. The Pakistani IT consultant was working late in his home office when he heard helicopters overhead. It turns out he was living 250 meters away from the place where bin Laden had been hiding for the past 3 or 4 years. 5.5 hours later, the White House issued an all-media press release at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, saying that the president would make an important televised address in 1 hour. Obama eventually made it to the podium at 11:35 p.m. to confirm that bin Laden had been found and killed. By that time, of course, anyone with a smartphone and a Twitter handle had already read the news, from experts and from complete random strangers, and celebrations had already begun in earnest. Keith Urban, the former Chief of Staff to U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, was the first semi-official source to suggest that the reason for the presidential address was the death of bin Laden, tweeting, "So I'm told by a reputable person they have killed Osama bin Laden. Hot damn." He hit send on his tweet at 7:24 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Twitter peaked at roughly 7,000 tweets per second during the intervening 4-hour time frame, culminating in 2 singular events: the highest-viewed presidential address of the Obama administration, as well as the official death of the mainstream media as the place one goes for breaking news. It would be easy to point to this moment as being the moment the concept of raw was born, and in all honesty, this wouldn't necessarily be a bad seminal moment to officially declare the beginning of what has become an increasingly mainstream movement. Mr. Attar's tweet was the stone hitting the surface of a global pond that literally went around the world 7,000 times a second, finally reaching each of us, one way or another, on our phones, well before the unconnected among us found out what happened the old-fashioned way. The triumph of the personal over the public. We can look to other events and the people who brought us closer to the moment beyond the bin Laden killing. Mention the Arab Spring, and the name that comes immediately to mind is former NPR correspondent Andy Carvin, who, at his most fevered pitch, was posting and reposting up to 1,000 tweets a day in the early moments of 2011. The 18 days of protests, centered in Cairo's Tahrir Square, ultimately claimed an official death toll of 846 people and toppled the regime of President Hosni Mubarak. But for anyone looking for the raw feed, the only place to go was Carvin's Twitter feed. The irony is that he never set foot in the Middle East during the entire Arab Spring. He merely transmitted what was coming to him via Twitter from thousands of people on the ground and in the square itself as the protests were happening. Anyone entering Carvin's feed with questions was immediately answered by those on the ground, not just providing background and context, but often with live video.